2025 Belgian Grand Prix race notes. Dick's race notes.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Two Guys, a Girl in F1. And these are my race notes for the Belgian Grand Prix held at the famous and iconic Spa-Francorchamps racetrack in the Ardennes Forest. Have one word to describe this race, and that's boring. I realize that Sabrina will probably disagree with this assessment, but after the first racing lap, and Oscar Piastri made that great pass on Lando Norris, there were no lead changes, and really the top three or four, there was no change for position from then on. Make no mistake, I love Spa. I think the place is amazing. I think Eau Rouge is just breathtaking. And I think Spa has notably produced some memorable races in the past. But I have to say that the 2025 edition of this race just ain't one of them. Towards the end of the race, I'll be totally honest, I was wishing that they would exceed the time limit and end the race early, but I wasn't that fortunate. And I think it's interesting because a couple of my colleagues who are, aware of Formula One, they watch Drive to Survive, and turns out both of them, they don't even live in the same state, but they wound up at F1 watch parties in their respective hometowns. Both of them messaged me on our work messaging system, and both of them said, are Formula One races always that boring? Because Drive to Survive makes it look a whole lot more exciting. And I said, no, that was an anomaly. So anyway, I thought that was some very interesting feedback from casual fans. The long rain delay, I believe, was much needed. There was a lot of criticism about it, but in my opinion, the amount of spray that was being thrown up by the cars was really made for hazardous driving. Apparently there was not a lot of standing water, which is a good thing, but the spray was such that if you were in the second or third car, you couldn't see a thing. And as fast as Spa is, driving blind is extra bad. It's never good on a slower track, but at a place like this with its super high speed, I think that I think the stewards made the right call. And it was tough for the fans and all that, but you look at the stands, they were having a great time. I don't know if they had all been, drinking heavily long before the start of the race or what, but they were happy. And anyway, I wish the race had been a better one for them to watch, because that kind of dedication should be rewarded, and I didn't think really it was rewarded very well. But all that said, just some general comments. I must say that I was surprised that no one tried to use the wet tires, although given the rain delay, clearly the teams decided that the intermediates were the best solution. But I think somebody if they had bolted wets on, they might have gone straight to the front until the track started to dry and the tires started to wear out and all that. But by the time the track started drying, hey, if you timed it right, you could go in, pull on slicks, and off you go. You might have had a tire advantage. I don't know. We'll never know, right? Lewis Hamilton, I thought, drove an amazing race. He had a horrible qualifying, very, very un-Lewis-like. And he came marching straight up through the field, and he has to be feeling really good about that performance. He didn't win the race, didn't come close to winning it, but my goodness, he passed a lot of cars, and I've got to give a big tip of the hat to him. Another thing that's really notable, and I think this is just this crazy statistic, but this is the first time that Max Verstappen has had a run of 3 consecutive races where he was not on the podium since 2019. Think about that, 6 years. Unbelievable, which just goes to show you just how dominant the Red Bull car has been really since 2021. They gave him that really good car that he won his first championship in. Then in 22, the ground effect cars came in, and of course Red Bull just annihilated everybody for the better part of 3 years. So, yeah, pretty amazing. I did think that besides Lewis, that there were some great drives that most people really didn't notice. At least I don't think that they were given the credit that they should have been. But to my way of thinking, the drives of Bortoleto and Gasly and Albon all scoring good points for their teams on a day when, just the sheer technical excellence of their cars was not nearly the handicap it would have been had it been dry. And, you think about like Mercedes, the Mercedes is clearly better than the Kick Sauber, the Alpine of Gasly, or the Williams of Albon, even though I think the gap between Williams and Mercedes is much closer than, say, Alpine and Mercedes. But still, Mercedes, they struggled, that's all there is to it. And what the other three drivers managed to accomplish with their inferior cars, I thought was pretty darn impressive. So anyway, I just want to give kudos to those teams. And having said that, I've got to scratch my head about what on earth happened to Aston Martin. They showed up with a new front wing. Of course, they didn't really get to test it. They had free practice 1 on Friday and went straight into sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon. So they never really, I don't think, got to dial it in, but good grief. They had done 4 straight races where at least one car was in the points. In this race, man, they were nowhere. They qualified 19th and 20th. Just unbelievable. So anyway, it's pretty clear the Aston Martin is circuit specific, which means they're going to be in for a really long weekend at some place like Monza with its long straightaways and high-speed corners. So anyway, it is what it is. And so with that said, we're on to the Hungaroring and the Grand Prix of Hungary next weekend. Hopefully this will be a much more interesting race. I don't care if it rains or if it stays dry. Usually, with a wet weather race, you see a lot of strategy and I love the races where it rains, the track dries out, and then it rains some more. Those are the deals where you just love seeing the race strategists roll the dice. But we didn't get that in Spa. Maybe we'll see something like that if the wet stuff starts falling from the sky. On the other hand, if it's a dry race, it could be very interesting. So thanks for listening, and we will catch up with you next week.
Sabrina's race notes. Thanks, Dick. Here are my thoughts on what was ultimately a race defined as much by what didn't happen as what did. Number 1, fan spirit amid adversity. The scenes of fans at Spa embracing the rain delay with such enthusiasm reminded me why this sport captures hearts globally. Despite an 80-minute red flag suspension that would test anyone's patience, the atmosphere remained electric. There's something uniquely Belgian about turning a weather delay into a celebration. It speaks to the resilience and passion that makes Spa such a special venue on our calendar. Number 2, Hamilton's strategic masterstroke. Ferrari pivot point. Lewis's early call to switch to slicks demonstrated the racecraft that separates champions from mere drivers. The bigger question, is this a genuine pivot moment in the Hamilton-Ferrari partnership? After a season of inconsistent support and strategic missteps, seeing Ferrari execute Hamilton's instincts flawlessly was notable. His climb from P16 to P5 showcased his wet weather wizardry, but whether this represents real progress in their collaboration or just a fortunate alignment remains to be seen. Something to watch closely in upcoming races. Number 3, Leclerc's mental fortitude. Charles's ability to fend off Max in those opening laps, particularly leveraging the SF25 straight-line speed advantage, suggests he may be overcoming the mental challenges that have plagued him in recent seasons. With many wondering how Lewis's arrival would affect Charles psychologically, his composure in withstanding Max's pressure on a track Max particularly favors was noteworthy. That early battle for P3 was one of the more compelling wheel-to-wheel moments we witnessed, though admittedly, there weren't many to choose from in this processional affair. Number 4. Piastri's courage and confidence. Oscar's opening lap overtake on Lando perfectly captured pure courage and confidence on full display. That move into turn 1 after the safety car restart required the kind of commitment that separates championship contenders from point scorers. Interestingly, there were reports of battery deployment issues affecting both McLaren drivers during the restart, something worth monitoring to understand whether this influenced the dynamics of that crucial pass. What impressed me most was how he managed the rest of the race without significant pressure from Lando, which also spared McLaren from any difficult strategic decisions. This avoided the internal team dynamics that could have complicated their dominant weekend. Number 5. Bortoletto's excellent drive. Strategic decision-making. Gabriel delivered another strong points finish with an intriguing one-stop strategy on mediums, while his more experienced teammate Nico required 2 stops. This raises fascinating questions about the driver versus team strategic decision-making, particularly considering Nico's recent Silverstone podium came from overriding the team strategy. Are we seeing differing strategic philosophies between these drivers, or is Sauber testing varied approaches? For Gabriel to out-strategize and out-execute his veteran teammate speaks volumes about both his talent and Sauber's remarkable mid-season resurgence. Number 6. Albon's quiet excellence. Alex's P6 finish, including successfully defending against Hamilton's charge, demonstrated why Williams invested so heavily in him. This year, especially, with new teammate Carlos providing an excellent comparison benchmark, we can see Alex's talent probably more clearly than at any point since he left Red Bull. In an era where driver performance often gets overshadowed by car politics and media narratives, Albon continues delivering consistent point-scoring drives that keep Williams competitive in the midfield. Number 7. The rain delay controversy, a multi-stakeholder critical analysis. Understanding this controversy requires examining the intersecting pressures and competing interests at play. From the FIA's perspective, they're the sporting regulator with safety as their primary responsibility. But here's what frustrates me. Rain at Spa is not a surprise. Yet their crisis management revealed fundamental process failures. With sophisticated weather technology and F3's earlier cancellation as a warning signal, why wasn't there a more agile decision-making framework ready? This suggests systemic issues in their contingency planning, particularly problematic when the race director must balance safety regulations with stakeholder pressures in real time. Recent fatalities and incidences at this venue, think Hubert, Delano, and others, create a legal landscape where any decision to race in marginal conditions faces intense scrutiny. Not to mention a shunt during the formation lap of the eventually canceled F3 race earlier that day. While insurance considerations may factor into these decisions subconsciously, courts examining foreseeability would weigh these tragic precedents heavily, making the delay defensible from a duty of care standpoint, even if frustrating from a sporting perspective. For Spa's promoters, this creates an existential dilemma. Struggling to maintain their place on an increasingly loaded F1 calendar, they desperately need inspiring races to justify their position. Yet they also face the crushing financial reality of potential lawsuits, remediation costs, and insurance implications from any incidents. And it's the delay paradox, avoiding immediate safety risk while potentially undermining long-term viability. From Liberty Media's commercial standpoint, this is particularly problematic. Silverstone ultimately delivered fantastic racing, but Spa represents something different. It's the iconic circuit often used to exemplify Formula One, with the Eau Rouge and Raidillon imagery featured prominently in the recent F1 movie. For the commercial rights holder, consistent delivery of thrilling moments isn't just about audiences, it's critical for sponsor relationships and development. When reality doesn't match the Hollywood portrayal you've just sold to the world, that creates serious business challenges. The broadcast disruption adds another layer of complexity. An 80-minute delay wreaks havoc on global TV schedules, which may explain why streaming deals with companies like Apple become increasingly attractive over traditional broadcasters bound by rigid programming constraints. Championship integrity questions emerge when delays fundamentally alter competitive dynamics. Teams meticulously prepared for wet conditions and multiple pit stop strategies, only to see the delay create essentially a one-stop. This raises profound questions about competitive fairness when weather predictions formed part of teams' strategic preparations. Technological solutions remain puzzlingly absent. Why hasn't F1 invested in better visibility solutions given these recurring issues? The current car's low downforce creates rooster spray that makes visibility challenging, and at Spa, the trees along the track cause water to remain concentrated rather than dissipate. The sport's technological prowess seems oddly absent from addressing its most predictable operational challenge. And the decision-making structure itself appears flawed. While the race director holds ultimate authority, they're juggling regulations while managing input from multiple stakeholders, an unenviable position that may require systemic reform rather than individual criticism. And for fans, the impact varies dramatically. Those who traveled internationally and camped in the rain face profound disappointment, while home viewers could find distractions. But here's the business reality. Neither scenario drives the engagement F1 needs to sustain growth. The delay was defensible from a safety and legal liability standpoints, but it exposed deep structural issues in F1's weather contingency planning and decision-making process that demands urgent attention. Number 8. Gasly's resilience. Points amid the chaos. Pierre's ability to continue extracting points from Alpine's struggling package speaks to character that often goes unrecognized. Considering the off-track turmoil surrounding the Enstone team, his consistency in bringing home results demonstrates exactly the kind of professionalism that will serve him well as Alpine attempts to stabilize their operation. Number 9. Tire strategy disappointment. Regulation reality check. This processional outcome highlights a fundamental issue with the current F1. The tire compounds and regulations that work reasonably well at purpose-built circuits seem to neuter the racing potential of our classic venues. Chris Medland's observation about ground effect cars and dirty air is spot on. We're witnessing the unintended consequences of technical regulations that prioritize efficiency over raceability. The result? Teams who accurately predicted weather conditions were penalized, while those who missed the weather call were rewarded by the delay. And number 10, looking forward, classic circuits versus modern realities. Here's my biggest concern. Is this Belgium result a preview of our remaining classic circuits and our remaining 2025 calendar in general? The combination of current aerodynamic regulations, conservative tire strategies, and DRS trains seem particularly poorly suited to traditional venues like Spa. My hope is that the 2026 regulation changes, with their emphasis on more agile, lighter cars, will restore the wheel-to-wheel racing these legendary circuits deserve. Because if we can't produce compelling racing at Spa-Francorchamps, one of our most naturally dramatic venues, what does that say about the current formula's compatibility with F1's heritage tracks? The sport needs to seriously examine whether our pursuit of technical sophistication has inadvertently compromised the racing spectacle that drew us all to F1 in the first place.